Well, hello everyone. This is Dr. Slay, and it is Monday, and we are now, gosh, we're getting so close to the end. We are in week 12 of reading 370, and our topic this week has to do with equity and literacy and culturally responsive curriculum, or sometimes what you hear is culturally responsive teaching. I have a lot of resources in this particular file that I want to just preview with you and tell you a little bit about what you're going to be doing. So here we go. You should be seeing, let me just make sure my screen is showing exactly what you should be seeing. And yes, you should be seeing this, the drop down of all the various different resources. So I'm going to go through this with you. First of all, I want to start by saying that this is a particularly important topic that is relevant all year long. This is not just something that you do, and you're not looking, oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Sorry, you are looking at the right thing. This is a topic that is important all year long, mainly because our student populations in our classrooms are very diverse. For any number of reasons, but that's just the nature of our country. It's the nature of the populations in our schools. Some schools are more diverse than others, but diversity has a lot to do with culture, and it has a lot to do with race. It has a lot to do with religion, language, background, experiences that people bring to their schools and such, as well as gender and things that are sometimes a little bit more controversial. I do want to make it really, really clear, though, that you will hear and sometimes see the abbreviations CRT. CRT for culturally relevant teaching or culturally responsive teaching. And that's the one I want you to pay attention to. You have heard in the news, and it's been a big deal, where they have this thing called critical race theory, also which has the initials of CRT. That is something very, very different. One is about how we respond to our students who come from a variety of different backgrounds in order to teach them equitably and to give them access to the learning and the materials in a way that serves them best. And the other one is all stems from some lawyers who brought it to a lawsuit, and that's critical race theory. That is not what I'm talking about. That's not what I'm teaching. That's not what I want you to think about. And it's clearly not what we teach in schools. We don't even teach it in college unless maybe you're in a law class. So the point is, please don't get those confused when you hear CRT. Okay. There's quite a lot of literature on culturally responsive or culturally relevant teaching. In fact, in many, many places, in many universities, it's an entire semester. It's a whole course all by itself. Clearly, we don't have that time, so we're just keeping it to a small module, and I'm going to ask you to explore some materials. So the first one here is 20 ways to bring more equity to your literacy instruction. So what you'll see is a variety of things that I'm going to ask you to think about and read in more depth. Number one, find out who your students are. Find out how they can bring knowledge and exposure of their backgrounds to your classroom. Sometimes we involve parents in that. You also learn a lot through their writing. There's other things that will be more familiar. Some people have seen this particular diagram where it says equality looks like this and equity looks like this. So your equality is basically everything's the same and you expect your students to achieve, whereas equity is you change what you offer to students to make they see and what they're exposed to more equitable or accessible to them. So equal is not necessarily the same thing as equitable. Now, this could be a little controversial. I've learned that recently. I've seen that diagram forever. I didn't know it had become problematic, so to speak. Sometimes we change things to meet our students according to physical space. We find different ways for them to participate. We find balance between introverts and extroverts. We look at the assets. An asset-based model of teaching is something that we hear quite a lot of in bilingual education, because we look at what they bring to the table. What can students do? What can they offer? And what do they know, which we don't always see when they come from different language backgrounds, especially. So think of what students can do as their assets, as opposed to something that really gets in their way and prevents them from learning the way that we think that they need to learn. There's a lot of individualization that goes on with um, culturally relevant teaching. And that's comes under the name of differentiation. We'll talk a little bit more about differentiation next week. We pay attention to the gaps in their learning and try to teach to help them become successful in areas where they might be a little weak. We build academic language, building that vocabulary that they need, have a lot of supports. You're going to hear that term, but what supports are you going to use? Well, a support is not just being on hand and being a handy teacher, but a support can be the tools that you give them. Maybe it's a dictionary, maybe it's manipulatives if a child needs it, or not no manipulatives if a child feels like I'm beyond that, I don't need that any longer. Maybe it's anchor charts, or some charts, that anchor charts and replicas that you put into a journal that they have at their table. There's just so many things that you do to support their learning that is part of that differentiation in providing what they need according to their needs. Understand that everyone learns differently, understanding the executive function, that frontal lobe of their brain. Using strategy groups as opposed to just ability groups, teach them according to what they need. Here's teaching them, it looks like this one's teaching kids what's expected in high stakes situation. That's our testing, give them specific skills that they can use in that sense for testing. And read aloud. Now you're going to hear a little bit in a minute about literature. Read alouds is a huge way to give students some representation in your classroom through the classroom libraries, through the books that we read to the kids, through the kinds of discussions that we have, and how we value the various different groups in our class. So we're talking about books here and being creative about how we provide that access. You've seen neighborhood libraries where you put one book in and you take another book out. There's lots of different ways that we can help our students to gain the materials that help them be comfortable and successful, and to see themselves in the literature that they have in their classroom. And become a partner with the parents. Let them know that you value them and where they come from. And so those are some things that I want you to look at more carefully. I just skimmed it ever so quickly. Let's see if I can go backwards, because I have some more things that I want to show you. I'm afraid that if I don't want this screen to go away. Come on, screen. Oh dear. I'm afraid, oh, no, it didn't close it out completely. Yay, slay. I didn't mess it up, I don't think. Okay, so let me back it up just a tad. So that was our first site. Here's our next site. And
is your nonprofit, or
there's a little bit of a video here that I'm going to ask you to pay attention to. It's about the difference between reading the world, critical literacy, and culturally responsive classroom libraries. This is an important video for you to watch to understand the value of an equitable and culturally responsive classroom library. It comes from this concept of reading the world, which came from Freire, which was a Portuguese scholar from years ago, and he worked with adults and helping them to learn to become literate and readers and writers, because their society didn't value that. So he brought the language of reading and writing to them, and the skills, by teaching them to read the world and tell their own story. So that's where this concept of reading the world comes from. And I think they've done a little bit of a play on words on that. I'm not going to show you the video in the context of our conversation, because I think that it'll take too much time, and you'll be able to read that on your own, listen to that on your own. I think you'll find it very interesting. It talks a little bit about an experiment where teachers were asked to go through and explore the books in their classroom libraries and find out what is represented. It'd be alarming to find out that what we put in front of kids does not represent the population that we have in our classroom. So I think that you'll find this particular video
We need diverse.
by Dr. Rudine Sims, and she is, or I'm sorry, Rudine Sims Bishop. She has three names, but she is what we call the mother or the godmother of multicultural literature. This is an excerpt from some of her work where she talks about why diverse literature is so very, very important. And she has framed this phrase that's called mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. So she explains about how books are mirrors for us, how they're windows to see through the other side and explore what it's like to be in another world. And of course, where the books can kind of look back and be a mirror to yourself, to your own world. And then, I'm sorry, the sliding glass door is where it opens the door for you to go through that door and see another world. So what's important is that multicultural literature and culturally relevant or responsive teaching is that it represents a variety of different populations. You don't necessarily just go and see that, oh, hey, I have a student that speaks Spanish, so I'm going to get all just Hispanic books for them. Or it's not tokenism. And I can't stress that enough. It is not tokenism. It's about the embracing of other peoples in our classroom in a way that helps everyone feel relevant, important, and that what we are talking to them about is something that is relevant to them because it's interesting and it makes sense and it's something that's reachable to that particular person. Literature is one of the most powerful ways to do that. So I think you'll find anything that Dr. Bishop says useful. I think you'll also find anyone who took Reading 350 with me will find that I did an exercise with all of you that most of my students have always enjoyed, and that's our literature circles. We did literature circles using multicultural literature, and we actually used a cultural navigator job. We added that. That's something that I've been exploring in my research with Dr. Morton and Dr. Lowenstein, and we've written quite a bit about that. But it is an opportunity for us to open our minds and expand our brains to be able to read the literature and try to really dig into what is it like to walk through this in the shoes of someone who comes from a different culture. So that takes a little bit of an open mind and a curious mind. And when we facilitate discussion around that, it helps us to not only see ourselves in that literature, but to understand what other people are experiencing. Because we don't just want to see, it's not self-serving, it's about it being inclusive. And when we learn to accept and observe other cultures for ourselves, then we are more inclusive of those that are in our classroom, and we don't look at them as being what we call the other or different or strange or odd from us, because that's not being inclusive. So that's something that you'll find very interesting. But I wanted to let you know that the multicultural literature circles activity that we did in class was very much a part of this, where it informs this whole business of multicultural and equitable literacy learning. So that was the sliding glass doors. Here's another video that is also by Dr.
If you're over
Bishop.
50, you don't.
Oops. I hope you're not over 50. Sometimes I do get, sorry, if I have a student out there who's over 50, maybe you'll like that one, but that wasn't the purpose of this video. So sorry about that. Anyway, I guess you'll know that I must be. Anyway, just look at my hair, you'll know. This one just talks about diverse books in the classroom all year round. So I think it reinforces some of the things that we've been talking about already. Think about that concept that teaching for diverse cultures and for equity is not a one-shot deal. It's not something you just do on Fridays. It's a process of how you embrace your class and its diversity and how you teach to their needs. So here's something then I think you'll find very, very interesting. So up to now, we've seen a website of strategies And I actually think I should bring that down just a little bit, mainly because of the order in which you want to see them. You'll want to see the videos first. Then I want you to read this dream article. You're going to find this a little bit interesting. This is written by one of our own professors, Dr. Childs, and she loves acronyms, so she has this DREAM, and each one of these letters represents diversity, relevance, engagement, access, motivation. So these are the things that she's found to be very important in creating a culturally relevant pedagogy, and that's a set of practices. And this is her work that she's been exploring. This is a topic that is near and dear to her heart, just as what I just described with the literature circles is something that's very near and dear to our hearts in the work we've done. But my work was written in a very researchy way, so I did not bring it to you, but you experienced it if you were in my Reading 350 class, or maybe even Dr. Lowenstein or Miss Dr. Morton's class a few years ago. So I want you to read that article and see what you think about that. And she has a blog that she apparently has gotten going in relevant to that topic. Here's our 20 ways. Here's another link that I think you'll find interesting. This one is another article on culturally responsive instruction. So do take a minute to work through this and get your heads wrapped around it. And let's see, what else do we have here? I think I am looking for a particular website. Yes, Lexia is another site where you're going to find some very interesting definitions. So look at this to help you think about, well, what does it mean to embrace equity? What does it mean for teachers to support and be able to identify, implement particular practices to support equity? How do you improve equity in literacy? It tells you to skip any kind of things that are fads. You know, a lot of times you'd find the latest thing or the hottest video out there. It doesn't mean that it's true or correct. And of course, to reject failure is don't look at failure as being something that is necessarily bad. Look at it as a launching point of where you want to go. And so Pedro Noguera is one of the researchers that talks about that. So there's some research cited in here, and Dr. Child's work, of course, is research-based as well, because I know we hear a lot about that. So scan through this to get some good language and a concept of some of the terms that you're going to need. You will hear about diversity and equity on your competency exams. So this will be some great places to go back and gain some valuable information to when book me. When I was a student, all of these things that that were delivered into my course shell, I used to download them and put them into a big folder, because I don't know how much access you'll have and when it gets turned off for you, but you should always have these available to you. So make yourself a folder with these resources. Let's see, we talked about this one, and then I think this is the last one. I need to move this up because this is really an important site. It's the Cooperative Children's Book Centers out of the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And so evidently, I didn't learn about this until recently, but it is a wonderful site for being able to find books, multicultural books as a resource. So I would look through this and find out, see, Shark Teeth is something that is, I know that's a multicultural book, but so it'll give you a chance to look at some award winners and maybe some events that will be useful to you as you try to tap into this topic. And anyway, it's a resource, and there's some literature resources for different book choices, different book awards. So bookmark this. I don't expect that you're going to master this site, but it is a good resource to have. So you want to make sure. I usually just put a star here, and then I save it to whatever it is, whatever tabs I've set up. So let me go ahead and save it into, I should have one for this course set up. And it's not popping up, but it's in here somewhere. At any rate, you can create something called a new folder for you if you don't have one. So I'm going to call this I probably have a folder called multicultural. Oh, there's my 371. See, I can put it right there and save it. Okay, so that's how you handle the bookmarks. At any rate, that's the resources. I want you to take some time to peruse it. So let's talk a little bit about some of our assignments for this week. Here's our assignments and tags. Looks long, but some of these are ongoing. So you have your scenario, assignment number 1, which is due on Friday, I believe. That's April 5th. So I'm going to leave that going right there. If you have questions about it, be sure to reach out. Your equity in, it's a writing assignment, by the way. You have your equity in literacy, which is what we just talked about. This is going to be a discussion post. So I'm asking you to view the resources in this folder here and list 2 things from the folder that caught your attention and why it's important and significant to you as a future educator. That's your discussion post, but I'm giving you a whole week so that you have some time to look at it, maybe a few each day, or maybe you'll spend longer time over the weekend, but it's not due till Monday night. You have the ongoing assessment project, so hopefully you have moved through that nicely, that you've already gotten started on that. It's not a huge project, so it shouldn't take a long time. I gave you a lot longer than I normally would, but I know you have other things to do. And of course, the TEA training for the dyslexia has been ongoing for a very, very long time. So that's our work for this week. The only thing that you will see that's on our syllabus, and I'm looking at my updated one, that I haven't brought up is this thing that says introduce final PBA. I'm going to do that in a separate video because it'll be something very different. I may actually talk about it next week, but we'll see if I'm able to get to it tomorrow and present that to you. I don't want to overwhelm you this week. I think you have plenty to do. But I think if nothing else, you'll find these resources useful. As I said, bookmark them and spend some time looking at it. If nothing else, listen to the videos and listen to and peruse those articles because I think you'll find it useful. You do need to have a good understanding of what these topics mean. Enjoy the learning. I think it's a great topic and make it relevant to you and what you're going to be teaching in whatever grade and whatever school district and whatever group of students that you think you're going to be working with. Have a lovely week. Bye-bye.